Welcome to 50/50 Books, the book review podcast where the books are split in two, and figuring out just what is going on is always a toss-up. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jonathan. This episode we are finishing Pretty Dead Things by Lilian West.
And immediately, as we did last episode, I'm just going to give a disclaimer mostly for myself. I did not particularly enjoy this book for a multitude of reasons, and so if you don't want to hear things that are exceedingly critical, because you just want the good vibes, maybe this episode is not the one for you. As always, I am going to try and explain my thoughts, but at the end of the day, it's a subjective matter, right? Like, these are my thoughts. John, your thoughts will probably be different, and then anybody reading this will probably also have different thoughts, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
yeah, and I'll say too, it may not be my favorite book that we've read, but it's also not my least favorite book that we've read. So I think if anything, this will be a good opportunity for us to have some good back and forth on what did and didn't work for us.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, it's also difficult because this is the most recent book we've read. So when I try to think back of like all the things we've read, all the things I've read before, some of that is just kind of tamed with time, I guess. Like my emotions towards it, I've kind of stepped away from them a little bit. So like, do I think this is the worst book we've read on this podcast? At the moment, I do. But like, that's at the moment, right? Like,
right. You may have had stronger feelings about certain books the moment we finished reading them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But regardless, I'm still going to try and explain myself throughout this, which is usually what we try to do anyway with all of our conversations. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how this goes, and I feel like even last time we already kind of came in with some slightly different feelings on the book, and that worked out for us. So
yeah.
Well, with that, we can get right into it. Could probably structure this similar to the last one, where we're going to start in the past. Kind of just address everything up to, but not including, Clarity's death. So one of the earlier things we see with the past scenes is that Lewis is seen cheating finally. Obviously, we know he's doing it, but he's seen cheating, and it gets back to Evelyn through word of mouth. Evelyn's response is that, she can never forgive him for what he's done, which I think we know is not true because she gets back with him, which at least implies some sort of forgiveness, if not a really unhealthy situation, which honestly that might be the case too.
Yeah, considering the time period, I feel like unhealthy makes sense.
Yeah. And then the other part of this that I'll highlight is she's described in the divorce proceedings as wanting absolutely everything. And I think both of these I highlight both of these for some things we noticed in the last episode of Evelyn being quite antagonized throughout this book, despite kind of being a victim here of what's going on. Like this angle of being like very, angry and sort of vengeful during the divorce proceedings. First of all, it's A, normal, but B, is like overdone, I think, in a way to make her seem like the bad guy. Like Lewis is doing his best, during the divorce proceedings. He's described as being not like other men, like he actually wants to give Evelyn the things that she wants because he knows he's screwed up, whereas other men would just like leave her out to dry and like brag about the cheating that he did, which is also just a wild take to like put Lewis as like he's a good guy for the way he handled his cheating, but Evelyn just gets pushed aside. Really,
it feels like we need to have our hand held into like who we perceive as good in this book, like
right, who we're supposed to like and not like.
Yeah, exactly. Because honestly, I'm a little bit of the opinion of fuck Lewis, like fuck Clarity. Like,
oh, interesting. I agree on the fuck Lewis, but less so on the Clarity.
Well, she actively participated, right? Like, she knew somebody was married and still decided to get involved anyway.
That's true.
We don't see that perspective in the flashbacks, and I think that's very intentional. It kind of paints her as a little bit more naive, innocent in the situation, but like...
That's true.
Right, she is actively tearing apart a marriage, like...
Well, yeah, and I'll bring it back to that very first flashback we get in the book where she's like, other people don't understand what's wrong with my relationship, or like what they think my relationship is wrong, but they don't get like what's really happening here, how we're so actually in love. And it's like, oh, no, I think other people do know what's going on here, and that's why they're all upset about it.
Right. It's like, I understand if they had like an artist's connection and like they were truly in love. I think that's the case. But if you want to develop that relationship, first of all, you can be friends. That's crazy. That happens.
Yeah. The constant issue in these books.
I know.
Yeah.
He is literally a white man in this situation. He can leave his wife. But Lewis is seen.
And does.
Well, yeah, but he does it a little
He
bit
could
too
have done
late.
it first.
Yeah. But Lewis is like seen as if he has no choice in anything that's happening.
Like, what else? It's the angle is, what else would he do, right? Like, oh, he's
Yeah.
in a marriage he doesn't want to be in, and it's like the woman is, in charge of him, so like the only thing he can do is cheat on her. Like, that seems to be the angle, and I think that's why it doesn't sit well with us.
Right. And this is jumping a little bit, but him getting so upset at the doctor in town. I mean, the doctor goes a little bit too far, but
He definitely does.
yeah, but like, I'm like, okay, glass house. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I think it's just like as a society, we've kind of romanticized cheating a little bit. We saw this in a different book as well. This cheating being like chill or whatever. What was it? The Lost Bookshop? Was it that one?
Yes, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and I think it's just romantic at this point. Like, to find the love of your life. And like, the problem with straight people is they need something forbidden about their relationship, right?
Oh, that's an interesting theory there. Yeah.
Yeah, like you see it all the time. Like, oh, it's a forbidden relationship. Like, they couldn't be together, and it's like, okay, two straight white people not being together. Like, I don't see the problem here.
Right. Like, the world is structured for you to be together. You're just choosing to go about it this other way.
Yeah, so they have to just like bring in these really like toxic elements to make it forbidden, and then we bring it up so often that at this point it's just like romanticized.
Yeah, I'd never made this observation, but I think you're right. Like, there's a romance movement. I guess it's one part forbidden love, but I think it's like supposed to be a finding yourself kind of thing where you're like, oh, I've kind of coasted my way into this situation, right? I ended up where I am because whatever, things just lined up that way, but maybe it wasn't like the most passionate feelings I had about it. And now that I've found like true passion, now what am I supposed to do? It's like this realizing that there's something more situation, and that tends to, I guess in those situations, though, you don't have to write your character to already be in a relationship or already be in a marriage, especially. I think that's just an angle some people are taking.
Yeah.
And maybe it just makes it feel stronger when you find that thing of like, oh, like I've actually gone to the level of committing to someone in marriage, but this other feeling is so much stronger than even that I am moved to misbehave.
Yeah.
This is me just trying to understand, not necessarily to support.
Yeah, no. I understand what you're saying. I think that's, a good point too. The finding yourself angle, which I feel like is very Hallmark. I don't know if you've seen any of those movies, but like,
it's been a while, but yeah.
Yeah, sometimes those characters are also in relationships, which is why I thought like the Cora Elliot relationship wasn't going to pan out at the end.
That's
because
fair.
like what you're talking about, I thought that was going to happen to Cora, right? She was going to realize she could do better and all of this kind of stuff, and that was going to happen, but there's literally no other men in this book for some reason.
That's
but
true.
that's I think that's kind of what's happening with the Lewis as well. I guess that's his story progression through it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I agree, you should deserve a loving relationship, but I'm also of the opinion that like, if you start to develop those feelings and you want to pursue them, you should divorce your wife before you do anything physical, like
for sure.
make out with somebody and build a bookshelf in their home. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Right. And for that matter, to be seen, like doing it in a place where you can be seen is like, oh, I've committed to doing this. Not that I support, the secrecy either, but like to go to the level, like you've now gone far enough where you passed secrecy and stopped caring about it.
Right. It's also interesting because he was planning to tell Evelyn, right? At some point, like that was his plan. He was going to man up and tell her, that kind of thing. And then that gets taken from him. And it's almost seen as like, poor Lewis, he would have done the right thing if he was given the chance.
Literally, though, I think I wrote that in my notes that it was wild that they said poor Lewis. Like that Lewis was the one that was screwed over in that situation.
Crazy.
Nuts. You mentioned the doctor, so I think we should talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Manchester. There was some light suspicion thrown around him in the first half of the book, and we actually get the details in the second half, especially with the flashback scenes more than anything of him. Just so happens to like run into Clarity and Hazel out and about, kind of a lot. I think they say almost every time they leave the house together,
Mm-hmm.
which is for sure concerning. And he always has a toy for Hazel. And this, I have to highlight this because it's going to loop back for something I thought was going to happen in this book later on. I thought it was like especially creepy that he was doing this with Hazel. Like he's her doctor. Like there's a professional relationship here, not even just a townsperson relationship. And someone even says too, like, you think he's really just like carrying a toy around, like waiting for Hazel to show up? And I'm like, yes. And in fact, I think it's worse than that. Like I do think he might actually be following them. And so he has the toy specifically because he's going to intentionally run into Clarity and Hazel. So this like sort of becoming comfortable with the kid, or like maybe using the kid as a way in, was just super disturbing.
Yeah, it was weird that Clarity, this is going to sound a bit victim blamey here, but like Clarity knows people are like obsessed with her, I think, like in the way that she doesn't fit into the town, in the way that people are watching. It's weird that she's not more like observant of this fact. Like she's so dismissive that the doctor is
Yeah.
showing up every single time. And I think that's a little strange, but I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. The annoying thing is, like, obviously Lewis in glass houses, but also that flashback is from Lewis's point of view, I think. And he mentions, like, the doctor had come from a previous town, previous marriage, and he held his past wife at, like, knife point or something. Knife point. Is that how you say that? I don't know. He held a knife to her. And I'm like, if that's real, it's hard to tell, because, like, Clarity throughout this book is told through gossip, right? And I think that's entirely the case. I don't think we ever get a clear perspective of Clarity and who she is. So I'm like, how much of that perspective that Lewis has is gossip?
Yeah.
But if it's true, or if you believe it to be true, why would you not tell your wife about it? Like,
right. I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, it's like she is possibly actively in danger, and your daughter is possibly actively in danger. Like,
yeah, I agree. I think what's silly here too is Clarity knows her reputation. Like she's like making choices about her life based on the fact that she has a bad reputation.
Yes.
And for some reason doesn't see that might make her a bit of a target in a situation like this, right? Like if you have kind of the sleazy guy who like sees you as, oh, you're someone who's willing to leave the man you're with for someone else, or you're willing to cheat, you're willing to do whatever, like, you're seen in like sort of a sexually negative light like that, that he might come for you more than someone else. And then, as it kind of suggests happens a little bit, like he might be more upset when he's then rejected too, in a way that might make him a dangerous person in that moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hear you that it's like, yeah, this is maybe on the victim focused side, but it's like more like self-protection is what shocks me, of like, why wouldn't you just like think more fully about the situation you're in?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think the only other thing I'll say with Jack is he buys that bracelet that Clarity likes for her, kind of against her direct intention, right? Like she was directly like, no, please don't do that. And he does it anyway. And what's especially weird about this is that we see Hazel with it in the present time. I think Hazel knows who bought it, right?
I mean, maybe, but like she was so young, and the bracelet ended up being mailed to Clarity later, so it's not like the doctor delivered it directly to her. So it's possible she forgot about that interaction, but then ended up finding the bracelet later, because it was like in Clarity's closet or something.
There was like an emphasis too on like how Clarity had received a note with it that must have like horrified her or something like that. I kind of interpreted it as that being from Hazel's perspective, but maybe not.
I think the note was maybe something Hazel had said. Oh, I think it's because Hazel said, like, the bracelet matches your eyes when she was, like, a child. And I think the note said, like, the same thing. Like, it matches your eyes. So, obviously, I think that was supposed to show that the doctor was watching them for longer than he approached them. And then, yeah, just, like, being a creep.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't really matter, I guess. Like, we get all of this bad shit about this doctor, and it doesn't mean anything. And also, Cora doesn't learn any of this. So, it's, like, just for us to know how much of a creep he is.
Yeah, it is just us. That's a good point.
But it's not like, you know, Jack gets any kind of repercussions for his actions. So.
No, yeah, that's a whole other thing. Oh, well, we're gonna come back to that. That's a whole other thing, though. Yes. And then one more thing from the past here is that we do see some interaction between Beverly and Clarity and Hazel, and it notes that Beverly actually kind of didn't mind Clarity and just like felt some guilt about that, but was like, "Oh, Clarity's kind of cool, actually." But she does behave pretty weirdly once Hazel comes around. And maybe that's because she's kind of a symbol of the other relationship, right? This is, to me, like the only part in the second half of the book where we get any additional suggestion that Beverly might have done it. We get this kind of one chapter of past that's focused on her and these interactions, because otherwise I feel like the second half of the book really doubles down on Jack, and forgets that Beverly is a thing for a while, which is probably just to distract, of course, but I kind of did expect a little bit more suggestion here and there, maybe like something that would be a little more under the radar, that Beverly was still a person of interest, and that never really came to after this.
Yeah, I think it was maybe one of the most interesting flashbacks in the book. The feelings of Beverly trying to do right by Evelyn, who she's obviously experiencing firsthand, like Evelyn breaking down and being angry and like all of those emotions feeding into Beverly for years, yeah, to be clear. And then going to Clarity and Lewis and seeing them so happy and seeing them as a perfect family and they're accepting of you, but it's like the absolute guilt you feel in regards to all of that. And that supermarket scene, it's like Beverly kind of wants to slot herself into this family, but she keeps looking at Evelyn, right? Like, she keeps gauging her reaction if she's saying the right thing. Like,
right.
It's a very stressful situation that no child should have to deal with. And obviously, we learn at the end, Beverly did not deal with it very well. But I'm not sure if that, like, progression in thought makes the most sense, I guess I'll say. Like, this chapter is exceedingly nuanced in regards to what Beverly wants. I feel like that is all lost when we get another Beverly perspective later.
I'm trying to think of what Beverly perspective later we're thinking of, like,
well, when she plans out how to murder someone.
Gotcha. Okay, in the last flashback.
Yes, because to be clear, I thought it was going to be an act of passion, which could have fit, I think, but it's entirely premeditated.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little psychotic, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. It does 100% lose the nuance then.
Yeah, because I'm just like, how does she reach the conclusion that she needs to, like, completely kill this person?
Yeah, it does feel out of left field based on the context.
Yeah. That's the past, though. I guess except for more of the murder, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's the past up until the murder, because that's the good stuff, right? Supposedly.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to it. Bringing it back to the present, we leave off with Cora and Hazel. They're supposed to visit Lewis at the nursing home. Basically, at Hazel's invite, Cora's coming along. And she's got a lot more hesitation now about her involvement with all of this. Feels a little like too little too late, but whatever, she's going. And this is when Lewis openly accuses Jack Manchester of the murder itself. So he's gone all this time thinking that Jack was the one who did it. And this, for some reason, is the line for Cora. And Cora's like, I'm leaving. And like storms out of there when she's just getting some good stuff finally. Like suddenly leaves, I guess, because she's deciding now she's overwhelmed with it.
Yeah, this was crazy. First of all, this man is like grieving his second wife. And Cora just like does not know how to be emotionally present in any aspect.
Yeah.
And then her just getting up and leaving suddenly is insane to me. Like, it is actually insane. Like,
it feels like she's like, oh, it's not about me, and then kind of made it about her by doing that.
Right. Like, okay, this comes up a little bit later, but you were so right in the first part. Like, when she's talking to Mimi about this interaction, she's like, part of me wanted to go to see his reaction to the rings, right? And it's like, okay, this is entirely about her, right? Like, her getting to see the results of her labor, like her getting to feel like the hero. She's returned these lost rings. Like, it's very selfish why she's going.
Yeah.
And she tries to paint it as like she didn't have a choice, right? Like, she feels as
Right.
though she can't back out because she doesn't have a good reason. Like, Hazel has invited her to go. She has to go. Like, and this is a theme throughout the entire book, I think. But, like, Cora being dragged along to these things. And it really is just a matter of don't be there. Like, if you cannot emotionally respond, if you don't want to be there for the right reasons, if you're only thinking about, like, yourself and the story of it all, like, and you're still not thinking about the fact that a woman was disappeared, murdered, don't
Right.
go. Don't get
Right.
involved. Just stop.
She really could have just let it, because at this point I think she gave Hazel the rings. So she didn't
Yes.
actually have to be there. She served no purpose.
Right.
Which is maybe a trend for a lot of the stuff in this book.
Exactly.
She's just, I guess, the delivery device for us, but yeah, like she could have just not.
It's also like we're about to see a repetition of information towards the same guilty party that is all useless and all gossip.
Yes.
It's all baseless.
Because we spend the whole second half of the book like this.
Yes, because Lewis accuses the doctor. Mimi is the one that, like, brings up the doctor. The gossip section will bring up the doctor. The police report, slightly interesting, I guess, but it's also just another red herring. It has useless information. There's, for some odd reason, no DNA testing going on in this town. Like, there's no point to any of it. It's just so nonsensical.
Just a lot of distractions, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I've been trying to think about this too, of like what makes this different from other mystery books, because other mystery books have red herrings, right? Like red herrings are a thing, and distractions and things to like pull you away from the focus. And I think it is really the issue that all of the information we need is already given to us in the first half of the book, and then like the second half doesn't have anything to do with it, really, right? It is a lot of filler, which doesn't make it feel like that pays off at the end, that we entertained any of those ideas. Like, this stuff maybe needed to be more interwoven with the first half material in order for it to feel like worth it. And,
Right.
like, we were counting things out, for example, right? But we don't count anything out from the first half of the book. We get all of the stuff in the first half of the book, and then we spend the second half of the book counting out basically one or two things.
Right. And I'll even say, like, the conclusion we reach, which, I mean, we knew in the first part, it still doesn't make sense as to how we reach that conclusion. Like, within the present timeline. Like, we as the audience can see it, but
Right.
Cora's information, even Joe's information, like, I don't understand how we reach the conclusion we reach. It doesn't make sense.
We're gonna have to come back to that when we get to talking about Joe. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves.
Sure.
Yeah.
I apologize.
You're good. I have some thoughts about that, but okay. Anything else from Lewis's part that you want to talk about?
Not really. There's no reason to talk to him. He doesn't offer anything new. He should have just gotten the rings and then left it at that. It's not like we tell him anything at the end of the book anyway, right? So
that too. Oh man, yeah, they're really just like, we'll just like effectively let him die without knowing. Though I couldn't tell if they were gonna just like tell him the next day because they seemed to be visiting him for his birthday or something, or if it was just like, we're never gonna tell him.
I don't know. I got the vibe that they're going to try to not tell him as long as possible.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured.
Because Cora does the same thing with Elliot, so I figured that was like a lifelong kind of.
I guess
lie.
I don't know how to feel about it, because they could have left him out to begin with, right? And then maybe I'd feel better about it. But the fact that they involved him at all by like bringing the rings to him and then he, like, to the point where he's able to accuse Jack, I'm like, well, now he's kind of involved and maybe he deserves to know.
Yeah, I mean, it would be shitty. It's like his daughter did it, but
yeah,
I don't know. Like, there's no winning in that situation.
Yeah, there isn't. They should have just not involved him, and then I'd feel better about it. Also, in a town where gossip spreads really quickly, I feel like he's gonna find out.
Oh, I mean, it's possible.
You don't think there's like gossip is spreading left and right in the retirement home?
I mean, for sure. Yeah.
Right? Like, it's gotta. Oh well. Briefly want to talk about Mimi and Juliet. They have a very small part in the second half of the book, but since we talked about them first half, I wanted to bring them up one more time. One, because despite the fact that I thought Mimi was going to be this treasure trove of information and like the secret to getting the stuff out, she's pretty much useless. For information, she like knew some stuff about Jack, but like not anything we're not going to find out otherwise, which I think kind of comes back to what you were saying, if we get a lot of repeated information. So like without Mimi, we would have been okay. Juliet like really effectively disappears this half of the book. I think she's like present, but just like doesn't contribute anything else.
Yeah, like she has some exclamations with Cora of like shock, But
Yeah.
she doesn't offer anything. She doesn't help in any way. Like,
She really could have been the buddy, the detective buddy, but she wasn't.
yeah, she did the graveyard bit, but that was also like useless information, I guess. Like, it didn't lead anywhere, it didn't do anything.
Yeah. It was, but it was something like it could have led somewhere. Like it could have, the style of like we're gonna investigate these things, the sort of energy Juliet had around it that Cora didn't, could have been helpful. I think.
I mean, yeah, it could have been good, but like, I don't know. It was just like the introduction of the Grey family as an idea was kind of unnecessary to what happened to Clarity. Like,
Yeah, I guess it was just to get the vibe of like what people thought of them.
I guess, but like I feel like that's again a reiterated idea, right? Like, this is the gossip people thought. This is the gossip people thought. This is the gossip people thought. Like, that's all we get throughout all of this. Even
Yeah.
Mimi's suggestion of what to look into is gossip. Like, we don't get any truth to anything. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think that's just like, we get it as the reader because of the flashbacks, but they're just, I feel like I mentioned this in the first part unless I cut it out. But like, if there had been a way to integrate the flashbacks into the story that Cora was looking into, like in a meta way, like actually be in there, then I think that would have been better, because that's like something like physically real, tangible for Cora to have. But it's just all gossip.
Yeah. We can now focus on Cora and her path. I mean, we'll still be talking about some of the characters she interacts with, but primarily just the sort of things that she finds out in the present time after the Lewis situation. So a couple things happen here. One is she runs into the sisters Ruth and Bev, and kind of uses this as a justification for why she needs to continue going on. She's like, the fact that I ran into both of these sisters is like way too like happenstance, like too rare. I must see it as a sign that I'm supposed to continue looking into this stuff.
Well, not even that, because she's thinking about the sign that way, right? Like, I don't know if I should get involved. I wish there was some kind of sign. And then she sees the sisters. She gets a text from Hazel. And in the book, it says, this is obviously some kind of sign. I just have to decide if it's a sign to stop being involved or to get involved. So it's still not like a clear defining of if she wants to get involved or not. So I'm like, why even bring up the signs at all? Like, if you're just gonna still leave it to choice. Like,
that's a good point.
Understand.
I feel like the point of a sign is a sign to do something, not a sign to continue being confused.
Right, especially because you've defined the sign previously in the chapter of like wanting one because you want to be involved for whatever reason. At this point, I don't even know, but yeah, it's still like a toss up. And we still get like her thinking like, oh, I don't know if I want to like intrude on this family. Like, do I really want to bring up all of this old stuff? Like, I don't know.
At this point, come on.
And it's like, at this point, a woman was murdered. Like, what are we talking about here?
And like, who are you kidding at this point, right? Like,
I know.
You are doing it. You are in it. Get over yourself. Like, stop thinking, oh, I'm such a good person, to be thinking of these things. Because I think that's really what that comes down to. It's like, oh, I perceive myself as respectful and thoughtful, and therefore I need to have these thoughts. Like, you're gonna do it, just do it.
Yeah, it just makes Cora such a wishy-washy character, and like, again, that getting dragged around rather than making an active choice.
Even the observation of the sign is silly because she has involved herself with these people. So the fact that she's seeing them and like actually having conversations with them is normal. She's a part of their lives now. The fact that Hazel texted her, normal. The fact that she runs into Bev or Ruth out and about, also normal. This is a small town where people run into each other, to the point that back in the day, I mean, obviously it's not the same town as back in the day, exactly the same way, but the same vibe existed back in the day. And the fact that they ran into Jack every time they left the house was still potentially left up to chance. The fact that we're running into these folks out and about doesn't seem crazy.
Yeah, which is why I was confused why we were confused about Lydia showing up. Like, if they're just out and about in the store and they happen to run into each other, or even if, God forbid, they all decided to meet up because they're about the same age in the same town, they obviously probably know each other for a long time. Like, what? There's nothing strange about that interaction on its own.
I think the concern, though, is that Elliot was like, basically like, our family doesn't fuck with them. So I think that's more where it came from than a regular person like why would these people be hanging out? I think that came from like if Elliot is feeling so strongly that I should not communicate with the Shaws, then why is his mother communicating with the Shaws?
But I don't think that's just a family thing. I think that's the town. Like, Elliot learned it from his family, but I think it's the entire town that's like, you don't dig into the Shaws. Like, you don't fuck with the Shaws. Because it's kind of like a black stain on the town.
Maybe. I would still see that as reason enough to be like, why is Lydia with them? I think there's maybe some angles of the questioning where I'm like, it's really not that deep, but to question in general why Lydia would be with these two Shaw sisters, I think there's enough there for that.
I could agree if Cora decided to do anything about it, I guess. Like, she sees them and she's like immediately like confused, worried about it, whatever. Which, like, I didn't understand, but if like she was going to have those thoughts, she should look into it, right? Like,
that's fair.
But like, again, the connection Lydia has with the Clarity situation is handed to Cora, right? Like, it's given to Cora by Lydia, oddly enough, because of the guest book. So it's like, yeah, this could be an interesting investigative thing happening, whatever. That sentence didn't make sense, but like, yeah, it's like Cora just doesn't do anything with it.
Yeah, that's fair. I did like what the potential was for this, of like, oh, there's like something weird happening with Lydia and the Shaws, like they're not expected to be seen together, and given that I'm like digging up this investigation, maybe there is some sort of connection between why they're talking to each other in this. So I think when it comes to sort of the red herrings in this book, this is one of the ones I liked a little bit more. And especially when we do get like the guest book and it's like, oh, like she is in the Manchester family. It's like, okay, like now there's like some teeth to the Manchester question in this book that weren't there before via Lydia. I think you're still right on the, like, as far as like the way information is given to Cora, like it doesn't really resolve in a way where that felt super good. Like I'm having trouble finding words for it, but I guess it goes as far as figuring out that they're related, but it doesn't really go much farther than that.
Right.
And so I wanted there to be a little bit more dig into the fact that them being like Lydia being a Manchester and being I presumably Jack's kid is like, oh, like there's something spicy there. Like, let's see if like we can figure out if Lydia knows something, or if Lydia and the Shaws are trying to hide something together because they all know something. Like the thoughts that this could have led to, or really the actions that those thoughts could have led to, could have been interesting.
Yeah. The police report also gives a hint of what you're talking about with the Lydia stuff, with like something might have been covered up, like there might be something more going on, because the police mentioned like Lewis accused the doctor and then the investigation ended, right? And somebody investigating it, not particularly Cora, but somebody else might think like it's either because Clarity had such a bad reputation they didn't see the need in investigating it, but also as soon as you accuse the Manchester family, things ended, like things stopped.
Yeah.
And so something about that might seem strange, especially when you've heard about the Manchester family from like Mimi and like other people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like you could have combined that idea of Lydia and the police report into something interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, but like we just don't think about it that way. Cora never questions things like that. So it just kind of is a dead end and falls off, and it's not important.
And there's a good point in there about actually what Mimi said with the Manchesters, because basically they find out enough information to pretty strongly suggest that Jack is maybe the person who did it, and because of that, everyone in town, I think, kind of assumes that he did, but are unwilling to do anything about it. Right, is more of the angle, right? They don't want to get rid of the town doctor. He does have a lot of connections and is kind of the elite. It's quite the challenge to challenge someone like that. Like there were some reasons given to why it stopped, but it took so long in the book to get to the point where Mimi is like, oh no, we think Jack did it, is basically what she said there. Like there wasn't actually a vibe, because we were questioning like, why has no one like opened this up sooner? Like, why is this just coming out? Like, I don't think there actually was a vibe that this was an unsolved mystery. I think it was one that was unconfirmed, but I think the townspeople kind of thought Jack did it.
Oh, I must have brushed that off because I do not remember that, but that does make sense. I feel like that's what happens in small towns, right? Like,
yeah.
You either have like gossip that twists it around so much you don't have a clear answer, or like the town just knows, but they don't speak on
Yeah.
it, right? Like,
It's just unspoken. Yes, yes.
yeah, which would have been an interesting angle because Cora is the outsider of the
Mm-hmm.
town, right? Like, you could have edged into something a little bit more thriller, like maybe even something a bit
Mm-hmm.
horror-esque in that
Right.
regard, especially with a Midwest town. Like, the atmosphere for that could have been really good.
Mm.
But yeah, it's just kind of like passed off, and Cora doesn't do anything with the information, right? She doesn't talk to Lydia. She doesn't talk to Elliot at all. Elliot gone. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
he's
Like,
done.
not in this book.
And she does have a conversation with Lydia that's Lydia initiated.
Does
Right, the
she?
one where she's like, I heard you've been investigating. She like kind of calls her out
Maybe.
for it.
Yeah, but like I can't remember anything coming from that conversation.
No. I feel like something did, but I can't remember now.
I feel like it might have been that instance where Lydia gave her information and said something, but then also might have said like, but stop looking into it.
I could believe that.
Yeah, it might have been another one of those.
Yeah. I do remember whatever it was, the conversation made me feel less like Lydia had something to do with it when she was so open about it. I wish I could remember more details, but that's the feeling I know I had at the end of that.
Well, to be fair, she was like also a child.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So speaking of, here's my kind of wild theory that kind of came up in this part of the book, and it's gonna maybe come up a couple of times in the next few things that we talk about. Because remember how I emphasized that Jack seemed to especially have an interest in Hazel, like giving Hazel toys and things like that. I kind of thought this was going to turn into a child stealing situation, actually.
oh.
Like, because I was like, so have they, and I didn't know like how old Lydia was or anything like that, right, in relation to them. So I didn't know if Lydia even existed. My thought was like, okay, like Jack wants a kid. Maybe Jack and Joan want a kid. They're unable to have a kid, for maybe a fertility thing, or they're just having a hard time or whatever it is. And so he's just gonna like basically steal a kid. And there's some things later on that made me feel more this way. Like it was a wild theory at first, and then like as more things came up, I was like, So then like when Lydia starts becoming a connected point in the story, I'm like, is Lydia the stolen kid? Like this is where my mind was. Is Lydia the stolen kid? And either she does or doesn't know, but like why this is like the fact that she's getting involved with the Shaws to cover it up is either going to be A, she knows and doesn't want people to know, or B, she doesn't know and it's going to come out at the end of the story. And that like Lydia is the one who's being played here. Obviously this is not what plays out at all, but this is where my mind was for not an insignificant portion of this half of the book.
That could have been interesting. Like, I think if that would have been done, we probably could have gotten things like Lydia having green eyes, which would have made us think of Clarity and like things like that. Like, I think there definitely would have been more like overt clues.
Yeah. I think the last sort of core bits of the story to talk about are with Hazel. Just some information we get from her. She mentions that Beverly lives in her childhood home, which is really off-putting at that moment. Like, why would she want to live? These questions come up. Like, why would she want to live in that house? And of course, that pays off later, like why she lives there. But we'll come back to that. The other thing here that really made me dig my heels in a little bit more on my crazy theory was that she mentions now that Clarity was pregnant when she went missing. There's like, of course there was the baby, which I'm like, really, again, why is this just coming out? Like this could have come out a lot sooner. Like, okay, there's a baby. There's a baby bacon in the oven at least when she goes missing. And this is really when I was like, oh my god, it is child stealing, because I was like, he stole Clarity so that way he could take her child. Like I thought, okay, maybe I was like, how pregnant was she when she was taken, that was my follow-up question. Is like, maybe she was getting close or something, in the last trimester, and he like took her so that way he could immediately steal her baby. Though also as a doctor, maybe there were easier ways to do this, so I wasn't thinking that at the time though. And then that's what made me think too, okay, what if he did steal Clarity's baby, he killed Clarity, raised Clarity's baby as his own, now we have Lydia. Like that's kind of the full line of thinking I had.
That would have been crazy.
Yeah,
I feel like that is a more interesting way to kind of like break down this small town. Like the Beverly stuff isn't that interesting in regards to like why she did it, like what was being hidden, right? Like
Hmm.
in this small town type of vibe, but like secret child, Manchester Gray, uh, blah blah blah. Clarity being like against her will taken and having this child and then like being killed, blah blah blah. Like I don't know. I think that's just a better way to make people in the town kind of reevaluate their willingness to gossip and like talk like
Yeah.
shit about women basically.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's just more like I guess it's more satisfying of a moral. Like you all
Yeah.
wanted to pretend this doctor didn't do anything. He did something horrific and now like you have the repercussions of that kind of thought process.
Yeah, and obviously, like, that would be a horrible thing to happen to someone. It would make Clarity, like, seen in a different light, too, right? They'd have to reevaluate the way they talk about Clarity, too, of being like, oh, her defining characteristic was that she stole a married man, to, like, oh, actually, like, maybe she did something bad, but also something really horrible happened to her, which is still
Mhm.
true, but just, like, I think having to acknowledge that level of horrible would, like, make people reevaluate.
Right, cuz what happened like a person, not me, somebody could justify Beverly's actions.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. Like it was in response to
Right.
Clarity's actions. Yeah.
Her family had been torn apart. Evelyn was, going through the worst period of her life. Like she was just trying to bring her family back together. And I
Hmm.
can't remember. I think this is in the flashback, or maybe it's not. I think it was though. But like, I think there is some justifying that happens for Beverly's actions. Like it's described as like
Hmm.
a teenage misfiring, like just a hormonal response, like something weird about trying to understand why this might have happened. And I was just like reading it like why are we justifying premeditated murder
Yeah.
of a woman and a baby? Like I don't understand what's happening here.
Yeah, yeah.
Crime of passion, maybe, sure. But like premeditated is it is like psychotic. Like that's oh my gosh, it's just so wild.
Hmm.
But it's still very like contained into like this idea of the Shaw family. It doesn't do anything for the town, I guess,
Yeah,
to tie it back to
exactly.
what we were talking about.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think even if like that was part of the red herring situation, like of course this is where like Cora not investigating enough becomes a problem. Because say Cora did investigate and she had kind of this same crazy thought process that I had of like, oh my god, like maybe it was more complicated than just murder. Like that would have made, again, that's like something else to me that would have made the amount of time we invest on Jack Manchester a little bit more worth it. To have like we're actually able to piece together kind of an interesting story from that could really involve a lot of people in town and like people who are close to me, like more than by happenstance. Um, that could have been a compelling alternate path that she investigated to then find out that that's not what it was. And that might have felt better because at least it had some teeth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is like just to show that a lot of this stuff should have been way sooner in the book.
Yeah, it almost should have been flipped.
Yeah, I know. We got to like the end of this book and I was like, there's like 20 pages left and we're still getting
Yeah.
like Jack information.
I felt the same way. Yeah.
I was so confused.
Yeah, because I remember finding out, when we find out that Jack is a major suspect, it's only just after the halfway point of the book, right? So like the beginning of this part we'd read, and I was like, it's far too early for us to know that it's Jack. I think it's not going to be him from that alone. But we spend so much time with him where I'm like, maybe it is Jack, and we're just like supposed to be learning all of the reasons why it's Jack, maybe, because it did last so close to the end of the book, but. Well, speaking of the end of the book, we get kind of a change, right? Like there's like a sudden moment where like I have to say it feels forced, right? Like where we go from like we're so focused on Jack to okay, well now like Cora gets stuck out and about and like needs a ride and like just there's a storm coming and like just happens to end up at Beverly and this is what refocuses the story back in the direction it's supposed to go and um that the fact that that's the way it gets refocused is what feels forced because yeah like we spent all this time with Jack, we don't have like a natural bridge back to Beverly,
Mm-hmm.
who's the actual person who did it. I would have liked to see more of like a this is why I feel like Beverly should have been talked about more in the second half of the book. We need to keep her in mind and make a situation where we naturally come across this information, but instead we kind of get this whole storm situation.
Which was crazy because, like, we did talk about the storm in the
Yes,
first part.
dude, I was not actually expecting that to like come into play at all, right? So she ends up at Beverly's house. She's like, I assume gonna go to the door, but she sees Joe, or she doesn't even see Joe at first. He kind of surprises her,
which is a freak thing to do.
dude. It was so bizarre, like where she like is obviously immediately concerned for her life. Levels of surprise, and he's like, no, it's okay, I promise,
Classic man.
Yeah. Like, what? And then he still behaves weirdly after that too. So I mean, I guess his whole thing is like behaving kind of like a weird background character at the beginning too, so maybe his social skills just aren't all there.
Insane.
Yeah. But yeah, there's this like whole storm thing going on, and I really was like, wow, I really said like there's gonna be a tornado in Joe, and like it's gonna like cause this whole kerfuffle of like Joe knows all of the information and then the tornado's gonna take him away, which obviously that didn't happen. But yeah, the fact that we even got that close, crazy.
Yeah, this part was so annoying because it's when we talked about that in the first part, I was like, maybe Cora will actively choose to talk to Joe. Like,
yes,
I feel like we had that in mind, right? Mm-hmm. Like, she was going to reach that conclusion herself. Her ending up at Beverly's, coincidence. Yeah. Pure coincidence, which is just so, oh my god, it's so freaking annoying.
I mean, we've complained in other books about things that feel unearned, and this is definitely the biggest one for this book. Of she's coming to the conclusion of this story fully by accident, and by no decision of her own, because then Joe just like is like, hey, look, I have her bones. It's like, what the fuck? Like, crazy. She just like shows it to her. He's like, I have something to show you, and just shows it to her. I'm like, really, this could have been done with words, Joe. We didn't actually have to show her the bones, but okay. So it's just, yeah, like she didn't ask for that. I don't even know we don't know as readers what Joe knows about how Cora's investigation is going. All we know is that she came and talked to Beverly, I don't know, a month ago. And that's all Joe would know about the situation. Like, he could have done this a month ago. I don't know why now suddenly he's like, okay, now's the moment. Like, what has he gotten out of the story that we read in order to decide that now is the moment to do this?
Right, because like maybe he's assuming that Cora is going to care,
I guess. Yeah,
but from what we've seen, Cora actually doesn't care about Clarity at all.
Oh no,
like that is not what she's thinking about. If anything, Joe should have just went to Hazel, who's literally Clarity's mother.
Yes.
Like, I'm so confused.
Well, it's also crazy too is that you kind of got at this before too. Like, the last thing he says on the matter is she didn't mean to. But she 100% meant to. Like, why would he say that?
It's also like he has no proof that she didn't mean to.
So this is the thing. I'm like, the only way, because you kind of mentioned this before, of like, how did this get to the point where we know it's Beverly, right? Like, we just have bones. So, and it's on the property. I think the bones being on the property is at least enough to investigate Beverly, right? So there's something there. But I think there's no way Joe just knows the bones. Like, I think he has to have other information, like, that he pieced together once the bones were found from things that Beverly told him in the past, because otherwise he actually, I don't think he doesn't have enough information. Definitely not enough to say she didn't mean to, but the fact that he says she didn't mean to implies he knows something else.
The only thing I remember, like, alluding to what you're saying is, like, Joe mentioned Beverly would say certain things and would speak of, like, past sins. But, like, even to me, past sins
it could be
to
anything.
Like a religious woman doesn't mean anything, right? Like, oh, she had sex before marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that does not equate murder.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, there is nothing given that connects finding the bones, because that could have been Jack, it could have been Lewis, it could have been Beverly, it could have been anyone.
Truly.
And like, we could say it makes sense Beverly would want to live in the house because she wants to keep track of the bones, but also she could maybe want to live there because it was her mother's house. Like, yeah, something crazy happened there, but like at the end of the day, it's still a free house she gets to live in, and like it was her mother's. So like, to me, that makes sense why you would live there.
I was confused about the house, right? Because is the same house? That's the same house that Clarity was in, though, right? So was the same house used for both marriages? Did I miss
Okay,
this?
here's the situation. Basically, I think this is how it happened. Clarity has the cottage in the woods,
Right.
which is where Hazel lives now. Evelyn and Lewis had the farmhouse first, but then when Lewis moved to the cottage, Evelyn wanted to move to move closer to town, I guess. So she was living in town at that point. And then I think Clarity and Lewis ended up moving into the farmhouse during that time. And then, like, yeah, after the murder, when Lewis ends up back with Evelyn, they move into the house again.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, and then Beverly will get that house.
I guess that makes more sense then for, like, Beverly to want the house, even Bones aside.
Right. Yeah, I think it does. Considering how much she loved her mother,
Yeah.
it makes sense to me. And then, yeah, past sins doesn't feel like enough to accuse somebody of murder.
No, for sure.
But for some odd reason, Joe thinks it is, and then Cora immediately comes to the conclusion that it is. Which, again, just feels like that bleeding of, like, what the author knows and, like, what Cora knows. But, like, those things are not the same.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's one thing I didn't give enough value to, is, like, that Cora doesn't actually know all the things we know as a reader. I guess I just kind of assumed she did, but you're right that doesn't come up at all. When we get the scene of, the police have Bev and, like, Cora is involved too, right? Is this, I guess let me clarify first, is this them arresting Bev, or is this like is this them responding to the call immediately, or is this kind of like after the fact when they decide they have evidence to arrest Bev, right?
Is this the scene where Bev and Cora, like, lock eyes for a second? I think this is when they had already arrested her. I think maybe it was like a court thing.
Yeah.
Like, because I think the town was gathered
like press
around.
Or something too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought. So with that, like, that feels like maybe too, this is the missed opportunity to tell us exactly how those things went down. But for me, like, the fact that this happens, like, that we get the scene of, like, okay, she's, like, been apprehended, like, there's some sort of legal response happening, is, like, at least in the perspective of the police, there's enough evidence, and maybe something else is happening here where, like, Bev, maybe she confesses, or, in interviews and stuff, like, they've gathered enough evidence that it's worth putting her to trial at least, right? Like, something. There seemed to me to be an implied behind the scenes, like, more things came out because the bones were found. Like, obviously, like, the bones being found is a big deal. It's going to spark some after things. And, like, I guess in my own head, I was like, it's fine. Like, I just assume those things happen, but really it is a lost opportunity, given that you're saying to you, like, you don't feel like there's enough. And I think at this point now, I agree with you. The opportunity for there to have been enough information was to fill in the gaps with a press conference, with a court scene, with some sort of reflection from Cora, because we do get reflections from Cora saying this is what was found out because we found because we reported those bones that Joe had found.
Right. Yeah. Because I think at this point, there is nothing physical you could find that would point to Beverly. So it would have to be an admission of guilt. She would have to confess.
Which I just don't know if she would do. I mean, it wouldn't be in her benefit, of course, period, but, like, it doesn't seem like it's clear enough that she should just give in, or that she would just give in, knowing her character.
I mean, I think she might. I think, considering Evelyn's already dead, who is most likely to be investigated or questioned because the bones are found? It's probably going to be Lewis, right? And if she doesn't want her father to know, if she doesn't want to upset her father, she might just confess.
Yeah, she doesn't want him to be involved.
Yeah.
I could see that. Honestly, that's a valid point. If she's thinking of protecting her father, she clearly cares about doing so.
Yeah, which obviously we could have seen a little bit more of in the book. Like, we never see the consequences of Cora talking to Lewis. We don't see, like, Beverly upset by that, like, breaching of trust, promise, whatever. Like, whatever conversation Beverly and Cora have at the grocery store, like, that doesn't come to fruition. But, like, that's a hint of what Beverly is feeling. But, yeah, we could have gotten a little bit more of that, I think.
Yeah, we know she loves her mom a lot, but there's a limit to that on the dad's side.
Yeah.
I think what I'm feeling about this book is just, like, certain sections of it are the wrong size of the book, the wrong proportion. Like, I kind of think the first half of the book should have been more of the book. Like, we're getting more of that exposition from the sisters and such. Like, that was kind of more interesting to me. The second half, where we're, like, investigating Jack, should have been much smaller. And this last bit where we're, like, fleshing out what happened should have been more. Like, that felt way too short. Like you said, like the last 20 pages includes all of this stuff at the end. Like I want more resolution. I want to know why we went through everything we just went through and what the payoff was.
Yeah, because, like, morally, the payoff isn't anything. Like, the investigation isn't really an investigation if Cora is just handed the answer, and it's an answer that doesn't even make sense. Like, from the Joe perspective and the Beverly perspective, like, why didn't Joe just report these bones? Like,
Yeah.
like maybe he thought the Shaw family was involved and he didn't want to upset Beverly, but it's like, I don't know. Personally, if I found bones in my backyard, and even if it involved my, like, in-laws, I would probably still report them, I think.
You should.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, you should. Yeah, that's the thing. Cora, at the end of the day, was not an essential part of this story for it to resolve. And Joe really should have just reported to begin with. And I understand it's like shitty. It's your partner that, may or may not really, but seems likely to be implicated in this stuff. That you have hesitations and complications about it. And it just, to me, it shouldn't have taken some random outsider coming to town being interested in the story for you to tell someone, Like you mentioned, like you should, like Hazel was an option, right? Like you could have told someone, like, and maybe if we got more characterization on Joe being kind of maybe more like Lewis, even like more pushovery, more like quiet. We get the sense he's quiet, but like just more pressured, or like even if Bev had put some active pressure on him, like if we got any of that context, it could have made more sense. But based on the way he behaves here with Cora, it's like, no, actually you could have done this already.
Yeah, and that feels like the case for a lot of characters in this book. I think Hazel's is like kind of the same way. Like, she could have actively been investigating. She kind of does, actually. Like, she doesn't necessarily need the rings in this instance, because she looks into the gossip journal first before Cora gets there. Like, she has the necessary drive to look into what happened. It doesn't make sense that she hasn't been doing that longer. So it's like, for some odd reason, Cora needs to be involved to motivate the other characters to pull her into this investigation she doesn't want to be a part of.
Yeah. So the last things I have here, we said Jack was a red herring, but he was kind of gross either way.
Mm-hmm.
Cora makes a comment as we get closer to the wedding material that Elliot was proof that good ran deep in his family, which I just don't know how you could say after this story, because it actually sounds like the people in his family are not good.
Yeah, I also wouldn't call Elliot good.
Yeah, he was dick.
He's not. He's a dick, and he's also not there at the second half. But in the first half, at least, like, he's so against Cora looking into this because of like town reputation.
Yeah,
and like that's still like bystander type of shit, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you're letting something bad persist.
Yeah, I mean, also he's not in the second half of the book because Cora doesn't want him involved. Like, right? Like he's set such a bad direction for himself that she chose for him to not be involved. So, and to not tell him things,
which is
great start to a marriage.
Crazy. Yeah, I know. I was gonna say a foundation of lies, basically.
Yes, a trend in this book.
I know.
Another fun thing here, theory-wise, I theorized a crazy last one that they would use the wedding rings for themselves. Was my thought. At the ceremony, they didn't do that, but they did get married with those rings present. They were used as the quote something borrowed. Yeah, which
I don't know. I still feel a little weird about that.
Why would you do this? Like, why would you use Clarity and Lewis's rings?
Yeah,
that's not a relationship I would model after.
Yeah, a relationship built on lies for your relationship built on lies.
Yeah. So anyway, honestly, this is like the most successful on crazy predictions I've ever been, because that's two of them that were pretty darn close.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it for the main story. I had some random bits, or what I like to refer to in the context of our show as loose change that I wanted to address. There are two moments in the book where I was like, Cora's being kind of rude.
Yeah.
Cora watched a movie and then was like super critical of it and was basically saying she could do better herself. And then another one where she's like observing that there's a book club happening nearby where she's sitting, of just older women, from what it sounded like. They were reading Anna Karenina, and she was like, I don't really know if like these women actually would read this book. Like, I bet you like a lot of them didn't actually read it. Like the classic like book club thing of like, I don't think they actually read the book. And then on top of that was like, I don't think like they would even understand, even if they did read the book. We're going to validate that too and say I don't think they would really like understand Tolstoy. Like I as the woman I am super affected by his writing. It like really meant a lot to me. But like those women just like they wouldn't appreciate it. Like they just want to get drunk.
Which is crazy because also the author vindicates that thought, right? Because
yes,
one of the women in the club is like, I just couldn't get into it. Like, and it's so crazy. It's like we really are doing I'm Not Like Other Girls about Anna Karenina. Like, what
honestly,
are we talking about?
Like, I just thought it was so bizarre too. But yeah, like because she includes the vindication, especially of like seems to be justifying Cora's thoughts about this, which I'm like, why are these even here? But it's justifying Cora's thoughts about it. But in reality, it's rude either way.
Yeah.
Like whether or not they did or did not read it is irrelevant to the fact that making these comments of like, oh, like I just don't think these women are like actually gonna like read and actually understand. Like that's so like disrespectful. Period.
Mm-hmm. It also is interesting because it just makes Cora as bad as the town, right? Because like people were talking shit about Clarity and like saying all of this stuff. Whether she deserved it or not. And it's just like Cora is being just as judgmental based on these women and where they're from. Yeah. And it's like, I'm sorry, this middle-aged white woman is reading Anna Karenina. I do think she can understand it if, you know, she wanted to.
Yeah, it's also not a light choice. Like, for your book club to read Anna Karenina, like, someone thought that was a good idea. Like,
right.
There's something to that. Like, let's give some respect, you know?
I think, like... this might bleed into my rating a little bit, but I think like this author, this is going to sound exceedingly harsh. I think this author so badly wants to be poetic and like a little bit high literature. Like she includes these moments of like poeticisms and like extended metaphors about like random stuff. Like there's one about dirt for no reason. And like Clarity's death at the end gets poeticized and is oddly romantic in its telling, which I think is actually a bit revolting for me. But it seems, in my view of this book, the author kind of wants to be a Tolstoy, right? Like they want to feel elevated, I guess. And the same with like critiquing the movie, right? And saying like it's like the script writers didn't know what they were doing. Like it's such a cheap movie. Like it seems like it wasn't edited at all. And it's like, it's crazy the author's putting that in there when this is the product we're reading.
Dude, that is exactly the thought I had too. Like, and I know we make our disclaimers and like have respect and all that stuff, but I did feel like this was putting that on the line for me because like this is not really here for another reason, right? Like what for Cora is this doing? Nothing. This is a way for the author to like, in my opinion, I don't see any other way that this could be this. This is the way for the author to put her own opinions in the book. And so I can only really take these two scenes as the author and not so much as Cora. And that really like, that makes me not want to be so respectful to the author as we usually are, because I'm like, you're so willing to like say like I am in a position where I can be critical of a movie to the degree where I think I could do it better. It's like you need to be ready for that criticism then, because that's what's going to come for your book when you write something like that. And I can't imagine that the Tolstoy thing is there for any other reason than what you said of like she wants to like channel him maybe and like be something like him and is expecting that her writing will be something like his. Like, I mean, I don't know if this is the right genre if that's the case, but like it's such a bold claim for the author to put in here, and I think we just have to scrutinize it because it doesn't serve the character, and so therefore it's the author.
Yeah, we'll say like these are obviously our assumptions. We don't know this author, but that's at least like the feeling I guess we got reading it. So
exactly. Well, with that, do you want to get into ratings, or did you want to talk about style things separate first?
We can just talk about ratings and style at the same time. We can make my rating a conversation, I guess.
Sure. Let's do it.
Yeah, because we've already mentioned like some of it with like the weird poetics that happen in this book that I don't feel like stylistically match. But that's like a subjective thing, I guess. Like somebody thought it was fine, so I guess it's fine. And we also kind of talked about, or at least I brought up like the repetition of things. Like it's not like the direct same text, but the Cora will like think something, and then like a few paragraphs later will think basically the same thing, and that kind of happens
Yeah.
multiple times. Like with the movie, for example, she thinks like it seems like it was written in a day and it wasn't edited, and then like in the next paragraph it's like it seems like nobody wrote this, and like it just didn't have a budget. Like it's the same thing,
Yeah,
just being said again.
it sits on something for a while. I definitely noticed that too, listening to the audiobook, where I'm like, oh, we're like still on this, or like didn't we just talk about this? Like same idea.
Exactly. It just made it a bit like difficult to read, because it did feel like you were reading the same thing over and over again, and it did feel like you weren't getting anywhere, I guess.
Yeah.
Which we've talked to death at this point, so. But again, that's all like subjective choice, right? Between the author, between the editor, between. So that's fine. Yeah, most of my other style points, I guess we've talked about, like Cora not feeling involved in the story.
Yeah, kind of passive reception of information.
It's a weird situation because we know more than her, obviously, but at some point she does learn Clarity at least disappeared. And I feel like that's concerning for anybody to disappear and for it to be seemingly covered up. So it's like, it doesn't make her seem like a good person, the fact that she doesn't want to get involved because she doesn't want to upset people.
Right.
Like, it's like faux respect, I guess. Like, she doesn't want to upset the sister. She doesn't want to upset Lewis, but it's like, you're doing that at the cost of somebody's life, right? So it's like, is that actually being respectful? Is that actually being a good person? It's really not, to be honest.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of something I said in the first half, of thinking that some of Cora's trauma was going to be used to explain why it is she's so invested in this story, when she like keeps giving herself reasons to not continue doing it, and none of that stuff actually ever comes back.
Oh, you're so right.
Like, the tornado was just a tornado.
Yeah, it's like, the depth, forced depth moments with like the parent's death, and because the grandmother character doesn't come back
not
either.
Once. Yeah, and actually, you mentioning that I was really only thinking about the tornado. I forgot her parents died.
Oh yeah, which is crazy. Like,
it was put off as such a big deal at the beginning. It sounded horrible. So
it sounded horrible, yeah. And, like, if that had been some of her hesitance, like, she didn't want to be involved because she went through something horrific, I could be like, okay, that makes sense. But then she literally sees bones at the end of this book and is like, she's freaked out, but honestly, she seems pretty okay with the entire situation. Right. And it's like, that's a woman and a baby. Like,
yeah.
They've both died in this instance. I know. Yeah. So, I don't know. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'm going to mention, I said this was a conversation. It's not. It's me just rambling for like 20 minutes. The last thing is like the moral of the story, right? Which is, we have some instances of it being mentioned, like digging up the truth. Like when after Clarity dies, we kind of leave the flashbacks with like this digging up the truth idea, which I think is supposed to foil like Beverly burying Clarity. But like, we didn't really get any of that in Cora's perspective, so that's like a different situation, but let's pretend we did. We still end this book with Cora looking at Lewis and looking at Elliot and thinking something should just stay buried. Something should just stay a secret. And it's like, what?
Right.
Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, first of all, you shouldn't lie to men to protect them. Like, fuck them. Like, I don't care. But we've just had like so many issues because people kept secrets, and a woman died and has stayed like buried in a garden because of secrets, right? Because you wanted to protect people, supposedly, if that's what Joe was trying to do. So it's like this idea of, well, some secrets should stay buried. Well, then I guess just put Clarity like back in the ground.
Right.
I don't know what to tell you. Like, fuck you, I guess.
I feel like it was an unsuccessful attempt to respond to the gossip theme in the story. If you wanted to go this angle, maybe an alternate direction would have been to address the gossip and be like, gossip didn't actually help this get solved. It distracted it from getting solved. But instead, this is what we got.
Oh, I could see that perspective. Like, you shouldn't just share uh worthless information and
Yeah,
like
just like
cloud
yeah,
things.
like leaning into all of the sort of bullshit parts of it. Like this is actually someone's life that was lost. Like stop bullshitting about it. Like let's actually try to figure it out. I don't think that's how it came off, but I could see that maybe being the intention, you know?
Yeah, I feel like if you were the most optimistic person possible, you might think of it that way.
Yeah.
But considering we just had like the digging up the truth line for clarity
Mm.
and then Cora being like secrets should stay buried, like they just contradict each other entirely.
It also, I guess, shows that like the characters aren't going to learn anything from this.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, cuz like to your point to like the doctor situation you mentioned before, that could have been an interesting way to change the perspective of the town. But like this is just more gossip. Like we saw it when Beverly was getting arrested or at the courtroom or whatever. Like it was just gossip to these people. Like they didn't actually care. They didn't change their perspective. Nothing was changed for the better. It's just all kind of still shitty. And I'm like, I guess Cora is also one of those shitty people. Like I don't know.
And like, I haven't seen evidence in the other direction, so.
Yeah. But this is a rating, isn't it? um so as noted, by everything I just spoke about, I just like it was tough reading this book. I feel like narratively it just didn't make sense, and the story itself wasn't really compelling. Like we figured it out immediately and then had to put up with bullshit like for the rest of the
That's
book,
true.
which
We
you
did call this
mentioned.
one at the beginning.
You were like, I feel like Joe is going to have all the answers, and so the second half of the book is going to be unnecessary filler until Joe talks about it.
Yeah,
And that's
that's
exactly
exactly
what
what happened.
happened.
You're right.
And I said in the first part, I'm going to hate it if it happens. And guess what? I hated it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think for me, this book is just a 1 star. Like,
Yeah.
I just did not enjoy myself. And I'm sorry about that.
Nope, that's valid. I didn't feel. I don't think I felt quite as bad, but I obviously didn't feel like great about this book either. I was gonna go to 2.5, but I do feel like there's some parts of this book where like I didn't want to hit down to a 2 unless I felt like there were some aspects of the book that I thought were harmful, but I kind of think there are,
Mm-hmm.
with especially like the women hating women stuff we talked about. Yeah, kind of the morals of the story not really lining up for the reader in a positive way.
Yeah, the men get oddly forgiven.
Yeah, I think you can take away some bad ideas from this. And so even if that's not really what the author intended, like that's where it's landing. So I think it has to be a 2. I think, with the caveat that one would just be like a more intense version of those things where I thought it was actively harmful. But that's like kind of where the 2 and 1 categories sit for me. I don't think I've really rated this low before. Like it really does have to feel like an active negative to be down here right below the average mark, and I think this is.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
Well, with all that, lots of thoughts, lots of criticism on this one. We need to give some good vibes.
It is necessary. So I'll go first. This is like a small section of the book, but like I did like that Clarity had a grave before her bones were found and locked in a box. Like I'm assuming it was Hazel. We never got confirmation of that,
Right,
but
we did
like
talk
she
about
was
this a little in the
buried.
first half too, of like the grave aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, she was buried with her family. We're assuming it was Hazel. We never get confirmation, and she's obviously being like tended to,
Mm-hmm.
um, in regards to like the tradition of the Grey family. So I did like that because like burial is obviously there's like a conclusion to like a proper burial, which I think I'd imagine they'd give her at the end of this.
Yeah.
But there is just like that spiritual aspect of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's nice to have the body, but also it's nice to have the grave, right?
Yeah.
Like there's somewhere physical you can go to see somebody that you've lost, and like you've done it like in a very like proper way how she would have wanted, right? Which I think is important in this book where Clarity is like seen through the optics of everyone else. Like this is kind of like the only instance where you have a clear understanding of like what she would want and having that be like done for her,
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
Yeah, I like that. Like the grave serves as kind of the physical manifestation of thinking about Clarity and her, and after her death.
Yeah.
And then yeah, it's sort of the way she's being treated, at least by Hazel, when the rest of the town isn't doing it, is to treat her like anyone else who's passed away. She's not focused on sort of the wrongdoings of her life, and she's not focused on the gossip. She's just saying, well, this is a woman who died, and especially in this case horribly, like she also deserves a grave just like anyone else does. Like treating her the same as the other members of the family, despite sort of the gossip and reputation around her.
Yeah, and having a deep understanding of like what that, because it's something like Americans don't talk about, right? Like, how do you want to, like, your afterlife care, like how do you want that to go? We never think about it, we never prepare for it.
Yeah.
But like Clarity must have instilled some of that in Hazel at some point. And so it's nice that like Clarity obviously was taken too soon, but at least she got part of like what she would have wanted had she passed. Like there's just an understanding there of Clarity as a person that I think is good.
I like it. For mine, I think the sort of highlight was the Lydia moment that allowed me to go off with my wild theory. Like, I think that was the sort of complexity I was looking for in this book. So it did deliver on that with Lydia, like being a Manchester, and that coming out in a time where it's like, oh man, like this could really give this story some more oomph to it. And for a while it did. I was like, okay, I can get invested in this part of the Manchester story. So I'm glad it was included.
Yeah, it was definitely exciting for you to bring it up.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about any of it. So.
I had fun with it. Not that, I mean, again, it was a dark potential, but like I had fun with the like, okay, like this could really be something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, you know, even if the author doesn't necessarily expect one to go this direction with it, I think that's why it was included, right? It was for you to kind of be like, okay, what's going on with Lydia? Like, why is she connected? And especially, I wouldn't have thought she would be. Like I thought she was just kind of like this stiff secondary character who makes Cora's life a little bit harder, but there was a little more to it.
Yeah, for sure. So that is the end, I guess, of Pretty Dead Things by Lilian West. Hopefully everything kind of made sense. We provided context, etc., etc. For next month, we are actually going back to fantasy. Nobody is surprised. And we're going to read Howl's Moving Castle.
I'm excited.
Yeah, by Diana Wynne Jones.
And this will be a little different than some other times because you've read this book.
I've read this book. I've also watched the film.
And
you've
I've done neither, yeah. Where it actually pays off to not have seen this film because it's definitely been on the back of my mind for a long time. But yeah, I haven't gotten around to it, so now's the moment.
And so the question is like, what do I provide for the first part of our episodes?
Yeah.
Because I can't exactly theorize on things I already know.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'll still be able to bring some theories from my ends that you can have fun with.
Yeah. So basically this is just kind of an experiment for fun.
Yeah.
To see what happens. It could definitely be interesting in the second part where we talk about everything that happened. Because I'll obviously have like the reread perspective, which we don't really ever get. We never get, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that'll be fun because we'll be coming at it from some pretty actively different perspectives of like, this is the first time I'm confronting this story, whereas you've known this story and this is a reread for you. Like whenever someone rereads something, you kind of get something new out of it, new perspectives. So, so I'm excited, and I'm hoping in the first episode, we can maybe have some discussion around questions, maybe prodding questions and such, to get me to think about things I might not be thinking about ahead, or that I maybe want to dig into a little bit more before we get into the second half.
Yeah. So we're reading up to chapter 12, not including it, obviously. And I guess we've assumed everybody knows what Howl's Moving Castle is. But yeah, it's an older fantasy book. It's technically a series now, but to my understanding, the first one is still kind of a standalone, in which Sophie gets cursed by the Witch of the Waste. Oh my god, do I remember her name? Yeah, the Witch of the Waste. And like kind of goes off in search of a cure to that, basically, which ends up being like Howl's Moving Castle. Howl is kind of an asshole. And there's some other stuff going on. I don't know what to tell you.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah. So if you have your own thoughts and theories about Pretty Dead Things, Howl's Moving Castle, all of our socials are in the description, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.